So, thank you. Today I am joined by Justin Murray. Thank you, Justin, for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
You have been on the Healed Approach podcast before, but not in person.
No.
We have met in person.
Yes.
I have seen you speak. But this is the first time that we've been on the podcast together in person. So thank you so much here at Homegrown Private Members Club with Corker Media. Justin, can you talk about your innovative system, BioSip?
Yeah.
Explain a little bit about it.
Well, this is a BioSip. It's a structural insulated panel that's been sort of manufactured with plastic, recycled plastic, PET. So it's 100% post-consumer waste. And the skins are made from a hemp and a sugar resin, which is a waste product from sugar refinery. So the product is about 88% waste material. And in its design, it's to be mass produced at scale, very, very quickly, delivering passive and affordable houses. So yeah, that's where we are in our journey, in our innovation. It's now been sort of production ready. And so we're just going through sort of the various accreditations and certifications needed to get that. But there's many barriers to getting there.
Yes. And where do we start with that? I could put words in your mouth, but please do tell me what you feel are the biggest barriers for you at the moment in terms of getting it to market.
Well, I mean, like any sort of new innovation, getting stuff to market, it's new, is very difficult. But the construction industry invariably does not take risk. It has a zero risk policy. And obviously that really stifles innovation. So, we have very high building standards in the UK and across Europe, and rightfully so. But this is also a huge barrier to innovating ways of constructing houses or homes in general. And until there's legislation involved, then it's going to be very difficult for innovation to actually start coming through and actually delivering on what they're supposed to.
Yeah, legislation. I think also incentivization.
Yeah, it's going to be a stick and a carrot kind of with sustainability to get that to net zero. I mean, the construction industry is really not taking embodied carbon seriously yet. So we've got a long way to go. The operational carbon, we're working,
Yes.
The construction industry is working really well towards, that's through, Passivhaus or the equivalent of Passivhaus. But embodied carbon isn't even getting a look in yet.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually, because I think that's a really good point. And I think in terms of, we all know about our carbon footprint,
Yes.
like you say, the operational carbon side of things. But embodied carbon is actually something I'm looking at with the client. We're doing some CPDs on embodied carbon, but, around facades in particular. And what's the resistance, do you think?
Well, there's not an appetite to change.
Yeah.
That is one of the sort of largest problems. I think the construction industry is really on its knees at the moment through a range of reasons. That's inflation, skill shortage, new future home building standard coming in this year as well. And we're adding all these different layers of costs onto the construction industry. And that's why it's one of the most failed industries at the moment.
Yeah. And also as well, costs around business and running businesses.
It's all very massive barriers to, and the last thing people want to start doing is taking risk when actually they are just about making ends meet anyway. And in fact, a lot of SMEs aren't making ends meet, and that's why they're going into administration. So innovation and sustainability, unfortunately, is not going to get a look in until legislation really starts kicking in and forcing people. And I think that needs to be sort of multi-pronged approach as well, where incentivize people to either retrofit or to build more sustainably. So that's, I think that's where we are. And I think we're at least another 5-10 years away from actually even looking at it seriously. as in embodied carbon.
Interesting. And just for the purposes of the listeners, by the way, can you explain a little bit about retrofit?
Okay, so retrofit, obviously there's yes, okay, well that's a plethora of
Sorry.
of discussion. So
well, I always just say it's just refurb.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's many different ways of retrofitting. You can have a very sort of shallow retrofit where you just maybe put in some sensors and try and make it more efficiency out of the energy, out of the lighting. Or there's a more deeper sort of retrofit where you're sort of almost you're going back to the fabric of the building and then insulating it from there.
Glazing,
insulation, and the only way you're going to really make a building efficient is to start really insulating it, and good windows, and start with the fabric, because the insulation is going to be there for 100 years or 150 years. But, a heat pump, for instance, will only last 20 years or 25 years because it's a mechanical device and it's not going to last forever. And the coefficiency on the heat pumps aren't really as good as they should be or could be, and they will be better as they get more and more popular. But I think to start with, insulation, it'll always insulate for 100 years, and it doesn't cost anything to run. So, in my opinion, insulating a building first is actually is one of the better routes to go down.
Yeah.
But it's also very expensive, and it's very disruptive as well.
But then I suppose we've got to look at the trade-offs. And when you talk about expense, maybe the upfront costs.
Yeah, it's enormous. And the return on investment is, 15, could be 20 years.
Exactly.
Which, people just looking at the pounds, shilling and pence, it's just not viable at the moment. And I think this is when the government needs to incentivize consumers, developers, contractors to deep retrofit when they can.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm seeing a lot of that, or having a lot of conversations around that as well, with regards to what I'm doing in my role. But I wanted also to, because you've kind of touched on some of the barriers, and we've spoken a little bit about legislation, but I do know that you conducted a survey recently.
Yes, that's right.
Can you explain a little bit more?
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you to everyone who contributed to the survey. It had a really good response to that. The headline is that cost is the most important part, unfortunately, and sustainability, unfortunately, is still down lower at the end of the spectrum, which is a shame, really, because it is all down to cost. Things cost too much. Speed to build as well is rates above sustainability. It's a nice to have, a sustainable sort of building. But the cost of that building is more important. If it costs 10% more expensive because it's made out of sustainable product, it's not going to get a look in.
How, and this is, again, a common theme, and an area that's up for discussion a lot. But when's the shift going to happen, Justin? When?
Yeah, it will happen. It has to happen.
I agree.
We only have 25 years. This is what we've set our target. This is our, we are legally bound by this net zero in 25 years' time, and not just obviously operational, embodied as well. Until things are more viable, they are not going to be sustainable.
But at what point do things become viable? Because how it's coming back to what you said before about how we are, the industry is risk averse. And, that's not to say that there are not, there are not people, there are not individuals, there are not companies that are taking risks out there. But for the most part of it, they are. You're absolutely right. And how do we push forward with innovation and sustainability if we're not willing to take a risk?
I think this is where the government really needs to step in and really needs to put their head above the parapet and show good leadership and start taking on board, maybe investing into more innovation, maybe even underwrite some of that, because it's not just down to the developers and the contractors, it's also down to the insurance companies and the mortgage companies. They want to make sure their asset that they are loaning against is going to still be there and still worth what they sort of borrowed against in 20, 30, 40 years' time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with innovation, a lot of that is failure, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So as a result from that, the mortgage companies are not willing, and I can understand why, not willing to loan against something which they don't know if it's going to be there in 30, 40, 50 years' time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think some kind of policy where the government could maybe underwrite, if in case of a failure, could underwrite that a little bit to take out or de-risk for the mortgage and the insurers.
What's holding that back?
Probably policy, bad leadership from government, maybe.
Do you think?
I think so. I think the government is trying to push this 1.5 million homes over the next 5 years, which I think I read some journalists calculated in working hours over the next 5 years. That's 2.5 houses completed every minute in the working hours. So, it's never going to happen. And I think this is where innovation really kicks in.
Absolutely.
And, think products like the BioSip can deliver fast, industrialized housing, which is both sustainable and affordable, and rapid assembly, because we produce it in a factory. It's all flat packed and it's assembled on site. But, everyone loves the idea. We've spoken to all our peers and we've had lots of advice and consultants and looking at the BioSip as a product. Everyone loves it. It's great. When it comes to, implementing, let's buy it. And it's like, no, the computer says no. And this is the problem with, the world we have today. It's a computer says no syndrome. It just because it doesn't tick any boxes. It might tick a sustainability box and all the other boxes, but the actual box where it says, look, this is a new product and it's an unknown. Oh no, we can't have that. It's
Fear of change.
Yeah, no, fear of change. And they just don't like to take the risk. No one wants to go first.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is where maybe the government or Homes England or, one of the government bodies could really sort of underwrite some of that risk.
Yeah, which I think, would be a positive move forward. And I think it will go so far. But, and again, I'd like to know your thoughts on this. In terms of, the future of the industry and in terms of that diversity and in terms of that, being able to push forward and be consistent with innovation and sustainability, I think there also needs to be an investment in young people coming into the industry and through the industry, and how, and also the perception of the industry. I think that the fact that the government aren't willing, to put policy on this and legislation on this sings a very loud tune.
Yeah,
just made that phrase up, but do you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, it's a whole new subject, isn't it? The skill shortages in the UK.
Well, it is a new subject, but for me, it directly relates.
It is down to all poor leadership, ultimately, and poor foresight as well. But don't think we're the only country in the world to be having this problem. In Canada, a lot of Europe, in America, they all have massive skill shortages. And, there's a lot of reasons for that. And labouring it's really hard work. You're working outside most of the time. But the average bricklayer is 52 years old. Now, they're not going to be in the workforce in 15 years' time. And that is not long away from a construction sort of perspective, because, a new development takes 7 or 8, 9 years, from start to finish. So it's, we need new skills to come in, or we need to change the way in which we deliver houses. And, that is maybe this is where the BioSip comes into its own, is that it is just a new methodology on how to assemble houses. We're not using bricks, and, we're just using another form or another way of building a house. But you don't need the high skills that you need currently to build a home.
I think, that what you mentioned there and what you touched on in terms of the labour shortages and the difficulties, or the, of working on site. For me, something like the BioSip takes a lot of that away.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you're right. We can't promote an industry to a generation that don't want to do that kind of work. Yet we need those minds and that diversity, because technology is moving on.
Yeah.
I've got boys at school that have no idea about what I've spoken about this before. I think I've told you about this, about my eldest son who's doing an engineering GCSE. Not a clue, about what the potential that has for him moving forward in his career. And this is where I feel like the industry is also falling short in not embracing technology and forward ways of thinking.
Yeah, well, I mean, education, that's the start. That's they're our future, and
education and perception.
Yeah, I mean, everyone wants to be in tech in terms of social media or marketing or advertising, but they tell you what they don't want to be. They don't want to be in construction.
Well, I went to a Thriving Construction Network event recently, and there was some. I think it was quite insightful. There was some stats around, what the younger generation value, and they value sustainability and they value they also want to be in positions where they are purpose driven. Okay. But on the other hand, they see that these things are all really important, but they really don't want to be in this industry.
No, they don't. I mean, my wife's from the Czech Republic, and all the children get taught how to bricklay, how to wire, how to plumb, how to plaster. All of them know how to do that, and they, when they come over to England,
I'm going to send my kids over to school.
Yeah, I mean, when my father-in-law and everything comes over, and they laugh at having to get tradespeople in to do some of the most basic of DIY, and we seem to have lost the ability to do anything in the house, that is remotely practical. I think we should be teaching our children the basics of just DIY. Why are we getting people in to change plugs and light sockets and stuff like that? I mean, it just seems madness. And that's where it all starts from, because you're not encouraging, the younger generation to get involved and work with their hands and make stuff,
Yeah. Kind of you talking there about getting people in to change light bulbs and do things as well. It's almost taking me down the route of procurement, and I'll try not to go. Yeah, I'll try not to go there. Because again, how much money is being hemorrhaged? Through
procurement and health and safety and stuff like that. I mean, I think obviously health and safety and procurement has its place.
Not denying that,
but it's completely now being over proportion. I mean, the UK is the most expensive place in the planet to build anything. Why? Why is that?
Yeah.
It's it's like 20%, 30% more expensive. For every pound that is spent in a government building to build it, 51p of that goes into the actual fabric of the building. The rest is on consultants, feasibility studies, method statements, risk assessments, planning. I mean, that's just monstrous. I mean, why are we spending so much money on administration? I mean, obviously a lot of it, some of it's going to be needed for sure. But we're drowning.
Better communication and better relationships would take a lot of that away.
Yeah. And there's too many middlemen. Involved as well. Everyone wants their slice of the cake, and everyone doesn't want to take risks. So of course they then consult on another person, and then they consult on another person, and then goes down that line of constant consulting because everyone wants to de-risk everything. And you've got things like Grenfell as well that come up, and all the reasons why that will happen. And it's frustrating as well, but it's also suffocating. I mean, some of it is needed. It's not like it's all rubbish, but I think we need to start de-risking at least a little bit of this.
Yeah, and I also wanted to kind of segue back a little bit into what you talked about around the BioSip and the modular way of building, and how there's like, computer says no. Because I do you think there is an element, and maybe this ties into education, but do you think there's also this element of conditioning around what buildings should look like and what a home should look like in this country? Because interestingly, you mentioned about how building in the UK is more expensive than anywhere else, and and we are seeing European countries light years ahead of us in terms of sustainability and how they're doing things. So
I mean, things like the bio, it's just a fabric, it's just a structure. You can make it look anything, you can make it look exactly like. I mean, if you had a BioSip, house with a traditional built house, we could almost make them look exactly the same. So it's not down to design or creativity. I mean, it's down to risk again. I mean, that's modular housing is going to be a bit of an answer to delivering 1.5 million homes, because it's the only way you're going to be able to mass produce these homes. And I think with this target, still being punted around, I think delivery of those houses will supersede quality and sustainability completely. It'll be all about trying to deliver them as fast as we can, and unfortunately that's going to compromise the quality, and sustainability is unfortunately going to be even further down that list.
It's interesting, and that I think in terms of the modular way, like you've spoken about how it's an element of not wanting to take a risk, there's and what have you, and around sustainability obviously there's the cost element. But again, I would argue, that a lot of that is mythical. It doesn't always cost more to build sustainably. And why are we going around building to substandards and not actually just building in a way that we deserve and in a way that we require? Because we want to save a few quid, which actually we're wasting in other areas because of systems and policies. But sorry, I digress a little bit, because really what I was trying to say is that I think also as well, there's a perception as well around modular building.
Yeah, there is. I mean, it's, I mean, modular building, they call it MMC. I mean, modern method of construction. It's really not that modern. I mean, they've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
So I think with the developers, I mean, it's, they always make a lot of money, because that's the way they've always built it, and they have a good, a good history on building, with bricks and mortar, wet build effectively. And that's how there's always made money. And that's also maybe what the insurers want, because they want a standard construction. Anything non-standard, there's less mortgage companies will lend on, a non-standard construction. And that just gives the developers more complexity and more costs onto them, because they might not be able to have, the clients or the customers or the buyers, for those, because they can't get the mortgage. So modular is sort of getting a little bit of hammering, and I don't know whether that's just a little bit of the, I don't know whether it's just a bit of misinformation that's just constantly getting punted around, because it's not true. Modular construction, is a great way to deliver, affordable housing very quickly. I just think it's just not been implemented as well.
Yeah, exactly. But this is where we have to take a chance, and we have to trial things, and we've got to be open-minded about stuff. I mean, just something, I don't know, this has kind of just popped into my mind, so I'm sorry if this is kind of a bit off-piste, but I do wonder whether also an element of, because we're all aware, anybody that's in the industry is aware that there is a mental health issue, crisis, if you want to call it that, in the industry. We have the largest number of male suicides.
Yes.
And I do wonder as well whether that plays a part in the reluctance to make certain decisions and the pressure.
Yeah, I'm not really in a position. I don't know enough about it to actually have a sort of a comment. And obviously it's tragic, but obviously it's a very male-dominated industry anyway. And mental health is a problem in general, but everyone's working really hard and not really getting very satisfied with maybe the work, or there's a lot of bullying going on. I don't know, but the industry, it's not a happy industry at the moment.
No. But this is where
Yeah.
I kind of, that's the point that I'm trying to get to, I guess, is that if isn't a happy, well-functioning industry, it's going to stifle innovation.
Oh, no, completely. I mean, why would people want to get into that industry in the first place? You're not inspiring, people to come in and, work and train, for that industry. And also, a lot of our European partners as well, they've, because of Brexit, have gone home as a result. And that's, has been a big loss in our labour force. Which is a shame, because actually they're quite skilled, or very skilled labour force, and now we're having to, and we do have a massive skill shortage, and there's no way around that apart from training people up, or you have a completely different way of looking at things and building things, where you have everything gets done on machines and automated and then assembled by hand by a handful of skilled people.
I don't think it's an either or.
Yeah, it could be. It's going to have to be part of both.
I think so, and I think just as much as we need more diversity in the industry, in terms of people, we need more diversity in terms of the actual built environment.
Yes,
and that does bring me on to something which I cannot do a podcast and not mention. Of course, is in terms of, do you, again, this is going to be anecdotal, but I do feel that potentially, because obviously we've identified that leadership is a big issue, and obviously legislation is a big issue within that. But obviously we also know that whilst we've got a mental health crisis in the industry, we've also got an imbalance in terms of gender.
Yes.
And again, I think there isn't just an imbalance in terms of gender, there is a massive imbalance in terms of diversity across the board. But do you feel that if there was more gender diversity, or just diversity in general, that would
I think diversity in general is a great thing, is a good thing. Spain's economy is going up like 3%, and they've put that down to diversity and migration. It was really interesting to see.
I learnt recently that Spain have implemented only 2 years ago a paternity policy.
Right. Okay.
Men, I think it's mandatory up to a certain point as well, but I can't remember the exact details of it. But yeah, sorry, it just goes to show that all of these
things, it does. Look, we all know this. There's so much academia on diversity and the benefits within the workplace of having a diverse workforce. So it goes without saying that yes, of course, the industry desperately needs a more diverse workforce, and training more people up, or females, people of color, is more important now than ever. And it could contribute to our reducing workforce. It needs to happen. It's not it's not a question of a will. It's got to.
Yeah. And it's interesting though, because like you said, it will happen, but can we just wait for it to just happen?
No, I don't think we can. I think this is where good leadership comes down to, isn't it? It's where leadership is about seeing what the problems are and actually solving them. It's not talking about it. It's actually delivering policy or implementing some sort of schedule into actually delivering the necessary requirements. That's what leadership for me is about. It's not about your followers or your likes or all of those. It's about actually implementing and deliverable solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did touch on this, I think, when we spoke before, but we haven't today so much. But I just wanted also if you could explain how the BioSip feeds into Passivhaus.
Okay, well, yeah, the BioSip, the core here is made from, like I said, post-consumer drinking bottles, actually. So at 300 millimeters thick, that'll deliver a Passivhaus standard wall, at 300 mil thick. And in a single panel, you have the structure, you've got insulation, air tightness, and weather tightness in a single panel. We're not using any wood inside our envelope of our building. And the reason for that is because whilst wood is a beautiful material, it's very sustainable, but it still takes 25 years to grow. So, using hemp or flax takes 10 to 12 weeks to grow. So, it's super quick. And, it's not just about building houses in the UK. It's about building homes all over the world in microfactories. So I see microfactories as where we need to get to in order to deliver the type of homes that we need globally. In Gaza, Ukraine, all those type of places, they'll all need homes, and they need rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
So, the BioSip is the whole fabric of the building. So that's the roof, walls, floor, internal walls, everything. So, and it can all be flat packed, and it can be assembled ready very
What
quickly.
about glazing?
Well, obviously, yeah, normal window, double or triple glazing if you want to hit Passivhaus.
Okay.
So you had normal standard there. I can't really go in too much because part of our patent application is
Okay, fair enough.
is part of that system. So it should be published soon. It's been filed, but unfortunately, it's going to be another year before it gets published.
Okay. No, thank you. And it's interesting as well because again, I could, this idea of microfactories. Why are we not telling the young engineers,
Well, this is an engineered, piece of work.
Yeah.
This is not about getting your hands dirty with bricks and mortar and stuff. This is about precision.
Yes.
I'm hopeful in that, once we get some further investment into the business to get it to the next level, then, we will sort of take on some engineers because it's an engineered product. The whole idea is that we can design a whole house online. You can configure what you want, the size, the build, press send, and it then produces us drawings, and then from those drawings we can then CNC cut those on a CNC cutter.
Using
and
robotics,
then,
maybe.
Robotics. It could be all automated. The whole process from start to finish can be automated straight to the straight to the door.
And this is what I explained this to my 14-year-old son, and he was flabbergasted. He was like, "What?"
Yeah.
And it's like there is. I mean, I'm hoping. I'm really enjoying even seeing the journey that I've in the short amount of time that we have known each other. But I'm hoping that obviously as you move forward and you get more engineers involved, and hopefully you can look at how you can also promote this in schools and, and look at that education piece. That's a massive passion of mine, is that everybody like you, anybody in the industry, we need to be partnering up with education and schools as well to get that's how we're going to change the face of the industry. Yeah.
I mean, we've had a lot of inquiries for scout huts, funny enough. I don't know why, but I've
got a little boy scout. He's an engineer and he's a scout.
Well, I did speak to one of the sort of the scout leaders and said, look, we can design your house, design your hut. Is this your HQ? We could get the boys to assemble it with us and be part of a badge. To one of their scout badges to actually work and help assemble it. I mean, he thought it was a great idea. I don't know how from a health and safety issue how that would play out, but the idea of just getting them inspired of actually building their own hut,
Love it.
could be inspirational. And that's where we need to get to. I mean, one of the benefits of the BioSip is it's just a panel, but out of that panel there's 1,000 applications ready for emergency homes. Office pods, scout huts, garden offices, 2-bedroom homes, 3-bedroom house. We've in the middle of designing a sort of 2 and 3-bedroom passive house at the moment.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you. I love that. The idea of I can't wait. I really hope that you can come back on the podcast in the not too distant future and share exactly how you built that scout hut or HQ with those Boy Scouts.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Thank you. I say Boy Scouts, actually. You do get Girl Scouts as well. Sorry.
Of course you do, yes.
Anyway, thank you. Thank you so much, Justin.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. Keep up. We need people like you. We need minds like you to drive forward in the industry. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.